ready for war. So April 12th, 1861, we are dealing with Fort Sumter. So Fort Sumter is located in South Carolina, and it's a small island, and it is a federal fort.
Sir, we have a problem at Fort Sumter. They're running out of food.
Tell the governor of South Carolina that we are sending provisions to them.
But who would be stupid enough to sail right into the middle of a bombardment to deliver food?
I was thinking, I'll take your food to Fort Sumter. Who are you? My name is James Beck. Major Anderson, we've spotted a ship approaching the fort. Who's at the helm? I'm not sure how to say this, but nobody, sir. Sorry about that. That looks expensive. General Beauregard, our mortars are stationed and prepped for bombardment.
Open fire.
Yes, sir.
Soon, South Carolina will fall to the Confederacy.
General Anderson, a mortar just burst over the fort. The Confederates are attacking.
The Civil War has begun.
The bombardment that followed lasted for 34 hours. During that time, Major Anderson's men caused little or no damage to their enemy. The Confederates, however, battered the fort, setting fires and dismounting guns. By afternoon on April 13th, Major Anderson agreed to surrender the fort to General Beauregard. The surrender was due as much to lack of food, supplies, and men as to the Confederate bombardment. Under the terms of the surrender, the men of the fort were allowed to fire a 100-gun salute to the American flag. On the 47th shot, a pile of ammunition exploded, causing the only casualties of the battle. Major Anderson's men boarded a ship heading north, and the Confederates took possession of the fort.
So the response to the shooting at Fort Sumter is that Lincoln declares a state of insurrection and calls for volunteers to enlist. This angers even more southern states and proves to them that they can handle an attack onto the north. And so Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, and North Carolina decide to secede. Now first let's look at some Confederate leaders. So we have the first one, Jefferson Davis, who is the president of the Confederacy. Then we have Robert E. Lee, who on April 20th, 1861, was offered the position to command the U.S. forces, but resigned, and therefore became the general of the Confederate Army.
I have been authorized by President Lincoln himself, with the full blessing of the War Department, to offer you full command of the Army with the rank of Major General, this army being raised to quell this rebellion and, of course, to preserve the Union.
General, my home
is right there across the Potomac. If you invade the South, your enemy territory will be there, right across that river. This is a great opportunity for you to serve your country. My country, Mr. Blair, I never thought I'd live to see the day that the President of the United States would raise an army to invade his own country. No, Mr. Blair, I cannot lead it. I will not lead it. But I have no greater duty than to my home, to Virginia.
The next leader we'll look at is Stonewall Jackson, and he's a famous general as well. He served with Winfield Scott in the Mexican-American War, and he was charged with protecting the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia.
Throughout the broad extent of the country through which you have marched, by your respect for the rights and property of others, you have always shown you are soldiers, not only to defend, but able and willing both to defend and protect. You've already won a brilliant reputation throughout the army of the whole Confederacy, and I trust in the future by your deeds in the field, and by the assistance of the same kind Providence who has hitherto favored our cause, you will win more victories and add luster to the reputation you now enjoy. You already gained a proud position in the future history of this, our second war of independence. I shall look with anxiety to your future movements, and I trust whenever I shall hear of the 1st Brigade on the field of battle, it will be of still nobler deeds achieved and higher reputation won. In the army of the Shenandoah, you were the 1st Brigade. In the army of the Potomac, you were the 1st Brigade. In the 2nd Corps of this army, you are the 1st Brigade. You are the 1st Brigade in the affections of your general. And I hope by your future deeds and therein you will be handed down to posterity as the 1st Brigade in this, our second war of independence. Godspeed.
Now look at the Union leaders. We have Abraham Lincoln, who is the President of the United States from 1862 to 1865. Winfield Scott, who is very, very old. He has fought all the way back from the War of 1812 all the way up to the Civil War, and will be replaced by McClellan in November of 1861. George B. McClellan, took over command of the military, but he made a lot of bad decisions, was distrusted by Lincoln, and actually went against some of Lincoln's wishes, and will again be replaced in 1864. Now let's look at the strengths and weaknesses of each side. So looking at this chart, we can see that the Union kind of overpowered the Confederacy in a lot of things. First of all, in population, the Union has 71% more 71% of the population, whereas the Confederacy has 29%. It has significantly more manufactured goods. They're slightly even on exports, with the Confederacy exporting a lot of cotton to Europe. However, they also have more merchant ships, more railroad tracks, more grain production, more farms, and more iron production, and more banking capital. This all translates to the Union being able to make a lot of things faster, such as guns, shoes, uniforms for soldiers, that type of thing, as well as transport it using railroads, which need iron, and also with traveling on by sea. However, the Confederates have what is called motivation and to stop an invader, and the will to resist this invader, which can't be really charted per se. The Union also had to subdue several states and change the social structure and the economy. So we have this huge structure within the South based on slavery, and how are they going to change that without really addressing slavery? And they don't until slavery is ended with the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. Here's another way of looking at the strengths and weaknesses. You could draw these into your notebook if you want to for notes, but this is another way to visually represent it as well. Now let's look at the Confederate strategy first. They basically were looking to defend the South and not really going into the North to conquer or take over. However, that eventually will change. They are exporting cotton, and Europe happens to be the largest buyer of cotton. England, France, all those. And they were hoping for financial and military support because Europe wants its cotton in its mills so that they can also be producing goods as well. However, what the Confederacy didn't take into consideration was that Europe also produces its own cotton, and so they began producing their own cotton and not relying on Southern cotton. And so this plan was known as the Anaconda Plan, basically trying to suffocate the South, as in the picture earlier. So as you can see, as an anaconda kind of overpowers and suffocates its prey, the Union was hoping to both cut off shipping in the Atlantic and also take over the Mississippi right here in the center to then split the Confederacy into two parts. The difficulty with this is that it would take a lot of time to come into effect, and a lot of Northerners are hoping for some quick action and some quick wins. Eventually this does work, but not until later on in the war.